We'll eat some dinner, because we didn't have any lunch. We're very hungry. Hello there. Listen, Julianne, I'm looking for a messenger I can send to Solitude. Do you know of somebody who's available? She's going to point me back to this room. And Calthar here. Calthar.
Alright then.
I'm told that you are a courier at need. I have a message that I'd like you to take to the General in Castle Dower, General Tullius in Castle Dower in Solitude. So Nige stands over here. She scribbles a note saying to General Tullius, General, full disclosure, this is who I am. This is what... hey, wait a second, Calthar. This is what I've just discovered. I think it might be handy for you to release this information to your spies, agents, whatever, so that they can, provide the information to the Stormcloaks discreetly, so that maybe Ulfric's hand can be forced in the campaign, or you can at least help to turn the tide of public opinion against him. She gives this note to Calthar and says, Calthar, if you could take that to Solitude, I'd be much obliged. Here's, 10 gold or whatever for your services. Can we drop gold? I don't even know. I don't think gold's a thing we can drop. Oh well. Pretend gold. So that's taken care of. Dustin. Alright, well let's get some food. Let's just sit down right here and eat. Whew, what an eventful day. It's rather nuts, actually. Knowing the full story now of Nig's being here in Skyrim. That's a big deal. Alright. Well, I was going to say we should get a room here and go to bed, but it's so early. It's only 6:30. I'm kind of thinking we could make it to Dawnstar by like 10 p.m. and just sleep there. I'd rather cover more ground rather than have a night go to bed at like 7 o'clock. That just seems a little silly. So let's do that. We ate some dinner. We sent off our courier. We'll now get back on the horses, head out of town toward Dawnstar. I think we can make it there tonight before it gets too late, probably. Still light out after all. Where's Ben? Arender, I'm gonna bring Ben. Yes. Round up the horses. Yes. Come on. Come on. Oh, come on. Did I not click it? I clicked it, didn't I? That was weird. What? Oh, okay. Alright. Anyway. Back to it. And this is good. This will give us a chance to talk more about the Elder Scrolls games in general. I think I've explained pretty thoroughly what the whole plot now, the whole conspiracy. I don't want to, bash it into your guys' heads. Right, so I think what I finished off saying last time was that I don't have a strong opinion really one way or the other about which one is the best game. I think they all have... Ah, crap. Another saber cat? We just dealt with one. Alright, hang on. Look out, Fox. There's death here. Yikes. Whew. Nice. And we just did deal with one of those things. Okay, let's go back and make sure that Arender gets on Ben, which looks like he's doing. Right. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't really have a favorite Elder Scrolls game. I like them all for different reasons, and depending on what kind of mood I'm in, I'll play a different one at different times. I think I mentioned in the Q&A that I've done, one of the Q&As, that Oblivion will always have a special place in my heart because it's the first one I ever played, and I think that typically it's the least loved. Not that it's unloved, but it's of the three latter-day ones, it's the one that gets the least plaudits, I guess. But yeah, I think that the They each have different qualities that are good. I will say this. I think, and let me define... Whoa, that looked like lightning or something. Let me define what I mean by Crasherino. Yeah, it crashed. And it was shortly after a quick save, so I'm guessing that might have been related to it. Might have also been that weird flash that I saw from the distance. Might have been the game telling me that time was almost up. Anyway, what I was about to say was, let me define some terms here before I get into it too much. I'm going to use terms like overrated, underrated. I just want to make sure that we understand what it is that I mean when I say that. Overrated does not mean a game is bad. It simply means that a game is popularly believed, I think, to be better than it actually is. Likewise, underrated does not mean that a game is necessarily good. It just means that it's popularly believed to be less good than I think it actually is. So, that said, I think that Oblivion is an underrated game. And I think that Morrowind is a little bit of an overrated game. Not much. And again, that doesn't mean that Morrowind isn't a great game. It is. It doesn't mean Oblivion it doesn't have its faults. It does. That was a bear. I'm just going to skip it. That was an Imperial soldier who's going to fight the bear. I'm going to skip it. So don't let it be said that I don't think Morrowind's a great game, or that I think Oblivion is a better game than Morrowind. I'm not saying that at all. I like, when I'm thinking about what's better, like in a series, or like a fight. Okay, it's like, so let's say we're talking about a musician, right? Let's say the musician that we like has released, say, 10 albums over his lifetime, and we're asked to rate which one's his best album, and somebody will say, oh, you know, his earlier stuff was his best. Later on, he just wasn't as good. He just wasn't the same artist later on. Or vice versa. You could say, yeah, his early stuff was crap, but he really came into his own later on. When I'm thinking about that kind of thing, and I'm trying to rate, like, okay, how good is this? I feel like there's a bias that people engage in, which is not unnatural. Which is to say that things that come earlier on that are good might be rated higher than they should be, because things that come later on, which are also good, aren't good in the same ways as the first thing. It's kind of like if you say, like, I don't know, think about, like, Doctor Who, right? There's so many iterations of Doctor Who now, historically, and everybody who's a fan of Doctor Who has a different favorite Doctor. Not everybody, but many people have different, you know, some people's favorite Doctor is Tom Baker, some people's favorite Doctor is John Pertwee, some people's favorite Doctor is, can't remember the actor's name, but the guy that played Albert Campion in the mystery, BBC mystery series. Oh God, could Carjo possibly be here? Hang on, I gotta check. Anyway, the point that I'm making about, or David Tennant, or whoever else has played the Doctor more recently. I actually haven't watched Doctor Who in recent iterations. My point, though, is this. Akari, come on, Carjo, where are you? My point, though, is this. In the case of your favorite Doctor, it's not always, but it is usually the first Doctor that you see. Carjo!
Khajiit is always watching for thieves and pickpockets.
Carjo, I did not intend to, but I found your amulet, so I wanted to give it back to you.
There it is. Ah, home.
Aww.
If you ever need the skills of a Khajiit warrior by your side, I would be honored to travel with you.
Seriously?
Until then, here. This is for you. In thanks.
I didn't even know that he could be a follower of yours. Excuse me 1 second, everyone. Sorry, guys, I had an incoming phone call there while I was LPing. Right, so we just gave Carjo back his amulet, and it makes her happy. She was able to do this favor for somebody who she didn't really think of as a friend. She just kind of did it. But it turns out that when Carjo saw it and he thought of home, it made Anai kind of homesick too. And she's like, well, at least I was able to do something for somebody who's far away from home. Hey, you got any potions? Maybe? Magica? No, you don't. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
I hope that you will come to
so,
the business.
Anyway, the last thought I was trying to make, or the last thought I was speaking of there, was your favorite Doctor, if you're a fan, is usually the first Doctor that you encounter. Not always, but it's usually the case. So, for instance, my favorite Doctor was Tom Baker, because when I was a little kid and my dad watched Doctor Who, he was the first Doctor that I was a witness to. And after that, he was who I thought of as the Doctor. and anybody else was just kind of like playing his part, basically. Now, I know that's unfair because somebody like Jon Pertwee, for instance, was the Doctor before Tom Baker was. So if you had witnessed Jon Pertwee first as the Doctor, you would think, oh, Tom Baker's just doing a derivative of Jon Pertwee or something like that. I don't know. But I think the same is true of other things in series, albums.
I'm just one of the miners. I don't want any trouble.
Of your favorite musician, movies in a series, actors who play a character, like your favorite Bond or your favorite Doctor. And I think the same is true of video games, too. I think in many cases, my favorite games in a series are the first games that I played out of that series. So I know that a lot of people talk about Morrowind as the best Elder Scrolls game. I am not going to argue against them. I don't think that there is an Elder Scrolls game that is better. But I would say that when they talk about Morrowind so glowingly, I wonder if it's possible that some of that glowing remembrance is not so much because Morrowind... not to say Morrowind doesn't deserve it, but maybe it's not so much honest appraisal as it is sort of nostalgia, but also sort of primacy. It was novel to you, it was the first one you played, and everything else since then you're going to compare to that one. And so it's any faults in the other ones are going to be compared to that first game. And the faults of the first game are not going to be as pronounced in your mind because you just enjoyed it so much when you played it. I don't know. I think that's kind of the case. So when I say I think that Morrowind is an overrated game, I think what I mean by that is not that it's not a good game or a great game, just that it is a game that people who rate it very highly, I think maybe some of that rating, a small part of it, but the capstone of that rating is because it was the first one that they played. And I'll clarify that thought some more in just a second. I want to get a room here. I'll be here just one night, because tomorrow we leave for Winterhold.
It's yours for a day.
Excellent.
I'll show you to your room.
Thanks.
Right this way.
I'm home for most of my life. And for a Dawnguard,
yes, so maybe a little bit overrated.
Let me know if there's
Because
anything else
people
you
played
need.
it first and loved it, and compare other games to it, and it doesn't seem to match up. But I totally understand that Morrowind was a real groundbreaking game when it was released. One of the first and best open world games, great story, just a huge world, and when you stepped out into it, it was incredibly inviting and just like nothing you'd ever played before. I can see why that would just be a jaw-dropping kind of thing. And so anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going to talk for just a minute while we're here and just pretend like Anai's just kind of meditating or reading some knickknacks or thinking about her plan or something like that, while we just talk for a few minutes before bedtime. So I guess, yeah, I don't have a favorite. Like I said, Oblivion's got a special place in my heart because it was the first one that I played. I think that all three games have qualities that I really, really enjoy about them that the other games do not have. And they also, all three have qualities that I find kind of frustrating that the other games don't have. I will say this about Morrowind's story. And this is not the last thought that I have on this subject, but it is going to be the last one I address in this particular play session. I'll discuss the Elder Scrolls games and how I feel about them more in the next play session. I will say this about Morrowind's story. Morrowind's story is incredible. The main plot, the main story. The religious aspect, the prophecy aspect, the politics involved, the history involved. Really, really well done. And I don't think that the other two, Oblivion and Skyrim, have matched Morrowind's main quest in terms of depth and writing. I will say, though, that I don't think of Morrowind's main quest and plot as just earth-shatteringly awesome, the way that I think some fans do. Because it has occurred to me, and tell me if you guys think this is crazy or not, but it's occurred to me that the main plot of Morrowind is actually very, very close to the plot of the Frank Herbert book Dune. I'm a big sci-fi fan. I'm actually more of a sci-fi fan than I am a fantasy fan, which is a little weird to say because I'm a huge Tolkien fan. I love the Elder Scrolls, but it's true. I actually do like sci-fi more than fantasy. And the Dune series by Frank Herbert is my favorite sci-fi series. I've not read any of the books by his son and the co-author that his son writes with. I've heard that they suck and that they're totally not in line with what Frank Herbert set out for the series, so I intentionally avoid them because I don't want them ruining my mental picture of what the Dune series is about. But in the first book of Dune, if you've read it, you'll know. I'll just list off some characteristics of the main story. There is a religious prophecy. There is an outsider that comes to this harsh environment, this harsh, unforgiving environment, where the people who live in that environment have essentially adapted to this environment and become really tough, really strong. Their strength is underestimated by other outsiders. There is the religious prophecy that's in place among those people in the harsh environment is one that an outsider comes into and takes advantage of, kind of declares himself the character that is mentioned in these prophecies, or doesn't really declare himself, but is eventually kind of falls into that role. And by the end of the story, it's unclear whether the character is taking advantage of the prophecies or whether the character actually is the person mentioned in those prophecies. There are great houses in Dune. There is an emperor in Dune, and all of these factions are trying to meddle politically with the situation on the planet of Dune, which in my analogy here is Morrowind. Let me think. There's what are some other similarities? I wanted to say that there were a few others, but those are the main ones. Yeah, the great houses, the emperor trying to interfere, the really strong, underestimated people who have been shaped by their harsh environment, the tribes, Ashlander tribes, the Fremen tribes, and mainly the religious prophecy and how the prophecy fits around the main character and how the main character uses that prophecy to achieve his ends, and how by the end of the story you don't really know if the prophecy was something that was used by the main character or if the main character actually fulfilled the prophecy. Not to say that the writers of Morrowind had Dune in mind when they wrote the story. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm not trying to posit any plagiarism or anything like that, but I just don't. So when people talk about how original and how amazing Morrowind's main quest was, I agree. For a video game, it is incredibly deep and well developed. But having read Dune, it kind of takes away some of the magic, I guess, of experiencing it, because it's just like, oh, okay, this is just like in Dune. I don't know. So that's where I'll leave it for now. I don't want to talk too much about this and not do anything else in this. Oh, shit, I didn't want to do that. Not do anything else in the episode here. So I'll leave it at that. Just pretend like that was me reading a book or something like that at the end of an episode. But I will talk more about it later. I have some more comments on Morrowind specifically, and then I have some comments on Oblivion and Skyrim. And some comments generally on how people talk about the games and how they get so up in arms over what's happening with the games, which one's the best, whether they're dumbing down, whether they're being streamlined. Again, I don't have a strong opinion either way on any of that stuff. I could see how you could make an argument in both cases, but we'll save all that for another time. So yeah, I hope I didn't bore you guys. Thanks for sticking with it. And then tomorrow we'll head for Winterhold.